Rudischhauser. Good morning. Thanks a lot for accepting this interview with PLAN and the EU Office of PLAN International. This interview comes at a very good and important moment for us. 2014 is an important year, first of all, on the EU long-term budget for the next 7 years, for which we have finally found an agreement, especially on the development cooperation instrument. But also 2014 is the last year before 2015, which marks the end of the Millennium Development Goals. So there's a lot of discussion going on that. But also on the private sector and the communication that the European Commission is about to release. So all those are very important topics for PLAN and for the international community. And these are the topics I would like to discuss with you today. Let's start maybe with the EU budget negotiations. After more than 2 years of long and intense negotiations, the EU has finally found a deal and an agreement on the EU budget and especially on the development cooperation instrument. What would you say were the most difficult and maybe sometimes conflicting points to reach an agreement on the development cooperation instrument?
Well, first of all, I think we can be very satisfied about the outcome, as you say, of the negotiations for the next multi-annual financial framework, because external cooperation, development cooperation, is one of the very few areas which have not been cut. So we have very significant finances for the next 7 years to implement our development policy. And as you say, the immediate short-term goal still is to contribute a maximum to reaching the Millennium Development Goals. Now, when it comes to the instruments more specifically and the development and cooperation instrument, we had discussions obviously with the Parliament and with the Council about our proposal for differentiation. That means for concentrating the funds on the poorer countries and changing the way we cooperate with upper middle income countries who have already made very significant steps towards development. And so it was difficult to agree which countries could be, as we called it, graduated out of classical poverty reduction strategies into a new way of cooperation. That was one difficult area, but we have found an agreement on this. Another area was how to divide the funds between regions and between themes, between priorities. Again, I think we have reached a good outcome. In the end, we could decide, and Council and Parliament could agree on that as well. And then finally, and that is what took us most time, the European Parliament has insisted on being more involved in the strategic part of the programming exercise. They have proposed to use a new instrument from the Lisbon Treaty, which is called Delegated Acts, Article 290. And we found in the end also an agreement after long negotiations how to associate the European Parliament better at the level of the strategic orientations of the programming. And we introduced an entirely new step in the programming process, which basically allows the European Parliament to express its views before the Commission finalizes the programs for individual countries or for the thematic programs. So there is an increased level of involvement of the European Parliament, and I think that was certainly a great outcome for the Parliament itself, but it was also very important for us to finally get an agreement on the precise conditions on how this would be done. So all in all, we have a good deal, we have important innovations, and we are ready to start implementing the program between 2014 and 2020.
Thank you. You mentioned that one of the difficult aspects was to agree on the sectors to prioritize. And as you know, PLAN has been very much involved in the whole MFF debate and negotiations, but especially around 3 themes, which were, of course, child rights, but also a 20% benchmark on health and basic education, and the gender aspect in the development cooperation instrument. And when the EC released the initial external aid package in December 2011, our first reaction was, of course, a bit of a disappointment to see that child rights were not included anymore in the new Global Public Good and Challenges instrument, whereas it was a priority in the investing in people instrument. Why would you say that? What was the rationale for not including children's rights in the initial EC proposal?
That's very simple. When we proposed the instrument, first of all, we wanted to reflect clearly the priorities of our agenda for change. And secondly, we wanted to make it a little bit less detailed than in the past. We wanted to avoid a very, very long list of everything, but that the intention was never to exclude attention to children's rights. It was just to present a shorter text, which was more general and therefore did not list some very specific objectives like children's rights. Mm-hmm. As you know, in the meantime, the European Parliament has insisted to reintroduce it, I suppose thanks to good lobbying from PLAN. But it was in any case always our intention to continue working on this, not only, by the way, in the development cooperation instrument, but also in the democracy instrument, which is a separate legal basis and which addresses this aspect very clearly. Let me maybe add that this type of work by the NGOs like PLAN, but also many others, has been extremely helpful for us, for the Commission, in obtaining a significant envelope for development. I think the lobbying that you have done with member states, with the European Parliament and with many other stakeholders has been very helpful in actually maintaining the development spending of the European Union.
Well, we're very happy about the outcome as well. Now, about the 20% benchmark in the final DCI text, there's a 20% benchmark for basic social services with an emphasis focus on health and education. Yet, as far as I know, only 13 partner countries have identified health as a priority for the next 7 years, and 31 have identified education as a priority. So, do you think that this could mean an obstacle for the EU to meet its political commitment to health and education at the field level?
No, I don't think so. I think it will not be difficult for us to reach the benchmark, and in any case we are committed to reach the benchmark. So as you know, the programming exercise is not yet finished. We do not yet have the detailed proposals for all partner countries, and the proposals that we have are still under discussion here in Brussels with the European External Action Service, with the political decision makers. But we still also are involved in dialogue with partner countries. And that means that we would still have the possibility to adjust and to make sure that indeed counting the thematic instruments and the national programs, eventually we will reach the 20% benchmark. It is in our advantage that the benchmark has been defined in a slightly wider way than in the past, so we can actually include activities which would not necessarily have been considered in the benchmark that we had in the previous development cooperation instrument. So certain types of activities will also contribute to reaching the benchmark, and I'm convinced that we will be able to do so. In any case, there is a clause now for midterm review of the programs, and should it turn out that for various reasons we fall significantly below the benchmark, we have a review possibility in 2017.
But beyond the benchmark per se, how will you consider approaching partner countries where you think that education should be a priority, but they nevertheless have not included education as one of their priorities? What sort of dialogue, or how do you plan on engaging with them to make them realize or make them work a bit more maybe on education?
Well, we have an ongoing and very intensive dialogue with the partner countries. And so even if education is not necessarily singled out as one of the three priority areas in which we work, we can still include in education in many, many other activities. I will just give you an example. I have just come back from Liberia, where I discussed with the government about their choice of energy as a focal sector. And it turned out that There is very low access to energy for the population in Liberia now, so there's a huge task to be done. And the problem is there are no trained electricians. There are also no trained specialists who can advise the administration, the regulating agency, the rural electrification agency. So in order to actually scale up access to energy, to electricity in Liberia, it is almost inevitable that we will also invest in training all the people that are needed in the electricity sector. So education may indirectly come back as an important subject in a country which has not chosen education initially as in the choice of its 3 focal sectors.